That certainly brings back memories. That is a clip from the musical Annie. And Emily, what you might not know is back in the late 1970s, I was fortunate enough to see the original Broadway production of Annie. And right now, there is a new production going on at the Rhinebeck Center for the Performing Arts, and we'll be talking about that shortly. Welcome to The Catch Up, a podcast from the Daily Catch where we take you inside the news. My name is Walter Mullen, and I'm the publisher of the Daily Catch.
And I'm Emily Sachar, the editor of the Daily Catch.
A reminder to listeners, if you like our broadcast, please be sure to subscribe or follow up on your platform so you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. So Emily, as you know, I love Broadway and I love Broadway musicals, and Annie is one of my favorite shows. And let me just quickly tell you why. First off, it's a fantastic story. It's kind of a time-honored story, but there's really, really fantastic music in the show. So you've been to see this new production at the Rhinebeck Center for the Performing Arts. What can you tell us about it?
So we are so fortunate to have with us on the show today the two co-producers of Annie, Dwayne Joseph Olson and Wendy Urban Mead. And we also have the director. So three special guests. And before we start talking to them, I just want to say I saw a dress rehearsal of Annie last week before the show opened, and I was absolutely blown away by the talent, the energy, the set. The whole thing was so magical. To think this was happening 5 minutes from where I live was just amazing. So thank you for coming in to tell us how the sausage is being made. Let's start, Wendy, with you, just telling us a little bit about what's been going on at the center since Lou Trapani, the anchor for so many years, has died. Where's the center been going?
Thanks for having all of us on the show. And to speak to this, Lou passed away a little over a year ago, and he was at the helm partially because his anointed successor, Kevin Archambault, had died about 18 months prior. So it was a double, and you can call it a triple one with COVID. So the center really took three heavy blows in a short time. And Lou kind of dragged himself out of semi-retirement to helm the place after Kevin passed. And then he became sick and died himself. And what is just such a great thing to say is that the center is thriving. And it seemed like things were very worrisome for a while, but on the financials seem to be very secure right now. And there's just an unbelievably unending parade of fantastic shows happening at the theater. Something that's unusual about the Center for Performing Arts is that it's rarely dark. Other community theaters maybe do 3-4 shows a year and it's dark the rest of the year, whereas the center keeps going. And that's partly because of the multiple companies who use the space, which Dwayne will speak to in a moment. But I think that there was a deep enough bench of people who wanted the center to continue to thrive, and it has. So we're really thankful. I don't know if that speaks to your question sufficiently, but
that's awesome. So yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that with us. And it's such good news to hear that the center is on good footing right now. So yeah, you mentioned Dwayne. Dwayne, tell us a little bit about these different theater companies. Why are there so many? How many are there? And how do they, to Wendy's point, help keep the center from being dark?
Well, I mean, to answer the question of why, I think, why not is kind of, the answer there. Most community theaters, they are their own company and their own place. And what happens there are things that solely come from the home team and nothing else. And there's nothing wrong with that. But with regard to the center, I think there are just so many people who wanted to do their own shows their own way, and the center allowed them to do that. I think it started with, the Rhinebeck Theater Society, which we are a part of back in the day, which the center was originally made to house. And then the center wound up starting its own home company later on, which is Center Stage, which is a wonderful production that I've worked with many, many times and directed for and acted with. And then there's also Up in One, Diana DeGrande's amazing musical theater company that usually does musicals. And then there's a smattering of many others. I mean, there was Castaway that did shows at the center for a long time. There's Definitely Human, which is about to do their much anticipated production of Misery at the center. So I think the center just decided that it wanted to be more than just its own. It wanted to be a hub, not a club. I guess is the best way to phrase it.
So, quick question about that. Is there some sort of master of ceremonies who's coordinating all of these different puzzle pieces of different theater companies, trying to ensure there's a certain number of musicals and a certain number of Shakespearean plays and a certain number of other things? Or does it all just kind of ad hoc come together?
Well, our wonderful artistic and managing directors, Carrie Dotson and Olivia Michaels Bogert, they are the people who are coordinating with all these different companies and, working to put our season together. They have the ability to determine what does or does not happen at the center and what is or isn't the best fit necessarily for us. Sometimes our seasons are kind of more strictly coordinated and sometimes they're a little bit more pieced together. I don't think it was necessarily by design, but this particular year, we've really touched on a lot of the classic children's tales. I don't think that was anybody's master plan, but between the center's thrilling production of Wizard of Oz that just happened, Shrek earlier in the year, now Annie. I mean, this is kind of the year of the stories by, for, and about kids. There was one year where the theme at the center was kind of like Americana, like Up and One had done Sunset Boulevard, and RTS, our company, had done the show Assassins, and it kind of depends on the year. But all of those groups and productions are kind of guided together by Carrie and Olivia, who have done such a wonderful job carrying on the center and the legacy of Lou.
Fantastic. Well, that's good you mentioned children's. I hope that Annie is considered a children's musical because I certainly felt like a kid watching it in a way. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on the show. Director of this very complex production, tell us what choices you made in casting that are special and different from what we normally see in a production.
Yes. So as we've talked before, we intended to have two Annies from the beginning, and the two Annies that we have cast, one of them is 11, which is the age that Annie actually is in the story, and one of them is 16. So I think that was a very interesting perspective they could bring to the characters. One of them is currently the age that Annie is. The other one has experienced that part of her life already and can look back on it now. So I think that was interesting perspectives they could bring. With regards to the rest of the principal cast that was not originally planned to be doubled, but ended up being doubled as a kind of late night callbacks decision, I think I like how most of the counterparts have distinct interpretations of their characters. I don't think that the two Roosters are playing them the same. I don't think the two Miss Hannigans are playing them the same, and I think that's really great. I can give them the same direction. They can take it in two equally valid directions, and I love to see the variety and the interpretations that they give to what I give them.
So let's just take a step back, Lisa. I want to make sure our listeners really understand this. So you intended, as you said, to cast two different Annies.
Yes.
But then you didn't intend to cast two Oliver Warbucks and two Miss Hannigans and so on and so forth. So what actually happened during the casting call? Is that the right term for it?
Yeah. During the audition process and specifically callbacks, the first time that thought was brought up was somebody we were seriously considering for one of the principal roles had conflicts on show dates. So we're like, okay, if this person is cast in this role, obviously two people will have to be cast in this role because you can't not have them for two show days. And I don't really personally in a community theater environment feel comfortable asking people to do a lot of work for little payoff, which is what I feel like being a scheduled understudy would feel like to some folks. So I'm not going to just say, okay, and also you'll play this part, but only twice, but you're still going to have to rehearse the entire time. So from that point on said, okay, well, this character is now also doubled. Shouldn't this counterpart character, like if it's Rooster and Lily, it can't be just Rooster or just Lily. It should be both of them. So should we have two for both of these roles? And then it just kind of spiraled from there because there was so much talent at callbacks that I couldn't fathom having to say no to some of it. So that's how we ended up with the double casting.
Wow. So how many characters have doubles?
I
double gang?
believe 8, but one of those 8, the counterparts are still in the ensemble when they're not playing Star to Be, which is the soloist in NYC who has come to New York to be a performer.
Plus Warbucks.
That sounds.
Oh, yes. Also, technically, add one more character to that because the two actors playing Daddy Warbucks on the nights that they are not Daddy Warbucks, play Drake, his head butler. So they're always in the show, just alternating who plays what role.
Wow. This sounds like a logistical nightmare, but I trust you're doing an amazing job because I saw one of the casts that seemed very solid and very, very fluid. Dwayne, tell us a little bit about, as a producer, why you think it's so important to open up the cast in this way.
I think, number one, it's just opening it up in the community and giving people that equity and providing people, the opportunity. There's so many things that I justify in this world by saying that's the community part of community theater. That's the community part of community theater. I mean, like you want to get as much of the community in the show as you can. And there are other benefits to it as well. Living in the age of now COVID is still very much present and has the ability to shut down an entire production. And I myself have been in a couple situations in the center that have been double cast where we were able to save a performance that would have otherwise been canceled by COVID, thanks to the cushion of double casting. It also doesn't hurt that it draws in a little bit more audience as well. But it's largely to, put more community in that community theater aspect.
Yeah, I don't think people think so much about you're not just putting on the shows to delight the audience, but you also have a collection of actors and actresses who want to perform. I think that's something I never really thought about until the double casting. Maybe you can talk a little about that.
Well, community theater is very unique in such that, with very few exceptions, you will never find a group of people that are working harder to put on a quality product for free. You don't really come across a community construction site. You don't really come across a community law firm. It's not too often that you find a group of people that gets together and puts together a quality semblance of some sort of service for the public just because they like doing it.
Yeah.
That alone is very noble. You're already, right off the bat, when you enter a space like this, you are dealing with a very committed, passionate group of people who are there not for the money, who are there not for the thanks or the praise, but are there because they love the story or they love the craft, or they're there because they want to get that little girl home every night. And when you have a group that is willing to come together and put that much hard work into something for passion and passion alone.
If I can add to that as well, there is an inherent amount of gatekeeping to theater as an artistic expression because it's one of the only art forms where you basically have to get somebody else's permission to do it. Oftentimes, whether that's getting the rights from the licensing companies to do a specific piece, whether that's auditioning and being cast. So when it's possible for me, I like to open those gates as much as I can. So there's only ever going to be a Daddy Warbucks. So what if I had two? What if I had two people that could play it? Now they don't have to wait until Annie is brought back again for another chance.
Yes. So, Wendy, I know you sometimes are in the shows. What is it like to be in a show?
Dwayne and Lisa are also seasoned actors, and I'm happy to speak to it.
But you're in this one, though.
It means I am in this one. That's true. It means a lot to be in the show. I also really enjoy being backstage. But what you get from being in the cast is Dwayne referenced the passion and the joy and meaningfulness of storytelling is in your whole body. And it's not by yourself, it's with other people. It's deeply interdependent in a way that very few things are left in our society. You cannot do the show unless other people are doing it with you. You cannot say your line unless it's a monologue, unless the other person says their line. So you have to have a level of trust. And you don't have to love everyone, but you have to trust them. And there's something so human and so powerful about that while cooperatively telling the story. And then, you work really hard. Sometimes you get tired over the rehearsal process a little bit. You're out till 10:30. You're tired. You have to go to work the next day. But then you open the show or you put on your costume the first time. You're like, oh my gosh, look at this wig. Or, oh my gosh, look at this dress. I'm completely different now. Like the woman playing one of the Hannigans just was in a role last fall where she played a boy, and now she's playing Rooster's girlfriend, and she looks completely different. And there's something so cool and fun about just presenting yourself as something completely different. It's very exciting and freeing. And And so there's the interdependence, there's the trust, there's the storytelling. It's you're doing it in your whole body. You're doing it with your face, and you're doing it with your hair and your feet and your shoes. And you're passing a prop. The prop really matters. The props are not nothing. You really think carefully what the prop is going to be. You try not to have too many so you don't overload yourself. Every single thing is such an exquisite choice. So everything feels so meaningful and specific.
Mhm.
And that's really cool. And then you open, and then you get the audience to laugh at the joke that you forgot was funny because you've been doing it 15 times. That's the rush that there's nothing you can do to replace that.
That's amazing. Well, Lisa, as we get ready to close out our interview here, it must be really hard. Now, I know you're going to tell me it's not, but make it sound a little more challenging to have two casts. What are some of the challenging moments that you faced bringing different casts together for this show?
Yeah, absolutely. It was definitely intimidating creating the rehearsal schedule because first we collect everybody's conflicts and then we build the schedule around that, trying to accommodate both of a counterpart being available at the same time so that we don't have to make up that rehearsal for them, trying to make sure that they all have the appropriate amount of rehearsal time because it's the same roughly 3-hour window we get for our rehearsal periods that we would have previously rehearsed just one cast in. And now we have to find a way to up the efficiency and make sure that we get adequate and comfortable rehearsal times for everybody involved so that nobody feels that they're under rehearsed. That was definitely a hurdle. So I greatly appreciate everybody's commitment to efficiency and hard work and making sure that that time was spent as productively as possible.
What about just the different roles? Like you've got 2 Annie personalities, 2 Miss Hannigan personalities, 2 Oliver Warbucks personalities. How do you juggle that?
I told the cast from the beginning that while the skeleton of their blocking and whatnot would be roughly the same, like I need you to hit this area of the stage on this line. Here's a bit that I've come up with that I'd like everyone to do. I didn't expect or want their performances to otherwise be identical. So we definitely have distinct personalities and interpretations between the players. Like, for example, one of our Graces leans a little bit heavier into generally being very sweet and positive, and another Grace, while still very sweet and positive around Annie, is a little bit more passive aggressive with her dealings with Hannigan, for example. So I like seeing the fully rounded and fully realized distinct interpretations of the characters.
Fantastic. All right. Well, let's wrap up, Wendy, with you telling us a little bit about, does Annie have any relevance today? I know it's one of the most popular shows ever staged on Broadway. What is its connection to our community and to our time?
Well, it's really an interesting moment for doing Annie because of its resonance to its moment in its own time, which is 1933. In 1933, the United States had just been through some pretty traumatic economic downturn and so forth. And around the world, there was rising fascism. And it's even mentioned in the cabinet scene in Act 2 when the Secretary of State says, look at this, Hitler is rising to power. We need to be ready. And so given that we're in a moment when economic inequality is growing in this country, and there's a lot of concern about authoritarian trends in the country here right now. So it interestingly resonates that way. But the primary way it resonates is that, as you said yourself, Emily, you felt like a kid when you were watching it. And kids love it. And people who used to be kids and are now grown-ups also love it because they remember being a kid. And it's got layered jokes so that it's funny for a kid. It's also funny for a grown-up, and different jokes land for different age groups. And it's really, really smart that way. And I think that people have been through a lot, been through COVID, there's a lot of stuff going on. And so going to the show and watching Annie's life land so happily by the end is just something we could all use right now. Like the choreographers said, they both were in Annie, one of their first shows ever as small girls, to be the choreographers and helping other little girls have it be their first experience. They're the beautiful full circle element of the whole experience for a lot of people. And people like me remember watching the movie when it came out and loving Carol Burnett as Hannigan. And it's just got so many points of connection. And then the people who get older and they can remember references to Jack Dempsey or whatever. So it just connects across all the generations, I think.
Awesome. Well, I want to make sure our listeners know there's still a few seats left, and you can go to the Center for Performing Arts website and purchase your seats to Annie. You have 2 casts to choose from, and I highly, highly recommend it. It's really fun, and it just will cause you to leave with an ebullient, insouciant spirit as you walk out. Thanks so much to all of you, Lisa, Wendy, Dwayne, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. It's been a pleasure.
That was really interesting to hear, Emily. So tell listeners, if they want to go see this production of Annie at the Rhinebeck Center for the Performing Arts, how do they do it?
So there aren't many seats left, but they can go on to the Center for Performing Arts website, and there is an easy opportunity to buy tickets. Shows will be running through September 7th, and you also have your choice of casts, as we've just learned. So make sure you know which Annie cast you want to see before you buy your tickets.
Terrific. So, Emily, it's my turn to ask you a question this week, and I'm going to stay on the topic of Annie. Who was your favorite character in the show and why?
Well, I have an admission to make. Unlike you, I had never seen Annie in production, and I was completely blown away by the character who plays Miss Hannigan. What a delightful, charming presentation. She's a very complex, nuanced character. She's on the one hand kind of a drunk, on the other hand, a nasty, caretaker of the orphanage. And I thought she really handled the role with such finesse. And it was just such a fun moment to see her. Of course, it's lovely to see the Annies and Oliver Warbucks and so forth. But to see Miss Hannigan really was a special moment. I think people who attend this musical, no matter which cast they see, will really get a kick out of the whole adventure.
And Miss Hannigan has that fantastic number at the end of Act 1, Easy Street, which really stops the show.
That's right. It's just, she's great. They're great, I should say. There's two of them. They're both great.
Fun fact, the actress who played Miss Hannigan in the original Broadway production, Dorothy Loudon, won a Tony for it.
Oh,
So it's a very popular role for actresses to play.
Yeah. Awesome.
This concludes our episode of The Catch-Up. We hope you enjoyed listening. If you like our broadcast, remember to subscribe or follow on your favorite platform so you'll be notified every time we drop a new episode. As always, we thank Maddie Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud at Radio Free Rhineclef for their help producing today's episode, and we also thank Esther Martell for her help with editing. Emily, always fun catching up with you.
Always amazing, Walter. Thank you.